Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. Lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And believe me, what we got planned for you tonight will make you think twice about flying again. just saying, just warning you. If you love traveling, maybe you should switch off now. Okay, my guest tonight is Colin Weir, who is an expat South African now living in Australia. His business for years has been investigating plane crashes from small to large passenger airlines and providing complex reports to authorities and airlines, identifying what went wrong. This is his job, and I don't know of anyone who has the knowledge that Colin has when it comes to planes. Tonight I'm calling on Colin's expertise to take us down the rabbit hole of just what happened on 9/11, 22 years ago. Was it a plane or a missile that struck the Pentagon? Could a plane cause such a deep hole in a field? And if so, why was there no evidence of a plane either at the Pentagon or in that field? Did planes actually strike the Twin Towers? Were the images holograms timed to hit the building when an internal explosion from the building was activated? How about Building 7? All these and more questions will be asked of Colin tonight. We will talk about the danger of just one pilot being in the cabin piloting the plane, robots and artificial intelligence taking over the piloting of planes, and the plane crash that killed the head of the Wagner Group last month. There will be lots of short videos and images with startling evidence that will make you think twice about what you've been told. But let's wait for Colin to respond to what we've seen. Just to get us warmed up, here is a short video about the unexplained demolition of Building 7 just hours after the Twin Towers collapsed on 9/11.
That a third tower fell on 9/11? At approximately 5:20 p.m. on September 11, 2001, World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed in 6.5 seconds from normal office fires, according to the government's final report.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
Later, the government finally admitted that Building 7 collapsed at the rate of freefall, after trying to deny it. So what's wrong with a building in freefall? What is freefall?
It's just like taking your car keys out and just dropping them. That's how fast the building came down, for over 100 feet.
This is high school physics.
A building cannot do free fall with 40,000 tons of structural steel in its structural system without it being blown up.
The only way that a building can accelerate as it collapses is by having pre-engineered, precisely timed, and precisely placed explosives. In other words, controlled demolition.
Normal office fires not only dropped a steel-framed skyscraper for the first time in history, and did so at freefall, according to the government's report. They also burned hot enough to create the molten metal observed at ground zero.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails, like you're in a foundry.
In an office fire, you cannot generate enough heat to melt steel.
So if you have a flame at 750 degrees, you can hold that flame under a steel beam forever, and you'll never reach a high enough temperature to bend steel, let alone melt it.
First of all, let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel.
Like lava.
Volcano.
I know of absolutely nobody, and no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it.
John Gross categorically denied their observations. He not only ignored evidence, he denied evidence.
The government acknowledged that Building 7's collapse was unprecedented. Engineers were also stunned. Yet somehow, news networks and many others knew it was going to happen. CNN reported the collapse an hour before it happened.
We are getting information now that one of the other buildings, Building 7 in the World Trade Center complex, is on fire and has either collapsed or is collapsing.
And a few blocks away,
Keep your eye on that building, it'll be coming down. The building is about to blow up. Moving back.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York.
The BBC even reported the collapse in detail live from New York over 20 minutes before it happened.
All right, guys, there you go. Now, I'm going to get our guest Colin on so we can get this show on the road. Here we go. Hi, Colin.
Hi, Scott.
How you going, buddy?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
Excellent. You're an early riser like me.
We have to be.
Just for everybody's information, it's 4 o'clock in the morning here in Australia. And here we are. Anyway, we've been up, since about 2:30, Colin?
Yeah, that's about exactly right. And it's freezing cold down in Melbourne. You're probably very warm up there.
Oh, it's lovely. It's balmy in Brisbane.
Yeah.
Now, Colin, just to kick off tonight's live stream, we've had you on a few live streams in the past, and your expertise in the aviation industry is, as far as I'm concerned, unparalleled. Do you want to just give people a bit of your background and expertise when it comes to the airline industry?
Well, I probably had about 62, 64 years in aviation, originally in the military in South Africa, charter operations and small regional airline operations. Then over to Australia, where we started the company Flight Safety, and we started doing accident investigations, auditing, and helipads, etc., etc. So in that process, most of our work has been involved with regional airlines and airline operations, and also accidents that relate to the airline operations, such as Garuda and various others. So we're either directly involved in the accident investigation, like Garuda, Newcrest, or the Jetstream accident in South Africa, in Durban, or we call in by the media to give an opinion, such as the MH370, which we're very involved with over here at the moment, because somebody has now started up the process of possibly finding the aircraft, which is suspect.
Right. Okay. Now, I'm going to take us right down the rabbit hole because there's so much conflicting evidence and conspiracy theories about these 4 planes on 9/11. And what I'd like to do is to dissect each different event, starting with what struck the Pentagon. Now, I've actually provided you with some videos before this live stream so that you can have a look at them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play those videos for everybody watching, and then after I've played them, I'm going to ask you to comment as to what we're actually looking at. So here comes the first video, which is CCTV footage of something hitting the Pentagon. And it doesn't look like a plane, but we'll get Colin to respond to that shortly. Okay, here comes the first video. The actual, whatever it is, hitting the building. Okay, so now I'm going to try and slow this down so that you can actually, yeah, I'm going to go to half speed. Okay, so this is going half speed. Okay, guys, the audio is very quiet, but if you watch this car coming through here, and you'll see the boom gate going up. No, I've playing this at very slow speed. It's not going normal speed. Now, if you look over here, just here where the cursor is, you will see a white spot appear.
You see the on the right hand side, there's like also like a boom.
Here it comes. You see that little white thing? That wasn't a plane. Okay, so what I say there, that's not a plane. And whatever it was caused the explosion at the Pentagon. Just watch next to that pole. Okay, there it is there again. You can see that little white spot. And that's you can see it's the trajectory that hits the building. Let's just keep playing. There you go. That's the next thing you see. All right, so that's the first video, and I'm going to play the second video, and then we'll get Colin to comment on these. Give me a second. Okay, let's get the second video up. That's a missile.
No, and you even you see the white smoke or exhaust from it even.
Okay, here we go. This is taken shortly after the plane, or whatever it was, hit the Pentagon. You can see the damage done to the Pentagon. And I'll just let the guy talking comment, make the comments. Where's the plane? Where's the plane? Okay guys, I'm going to just show you an image which is photoshopped, which kind of shows how the plane would have had to hit the building. Now remember, we're talking about a large passenger plane. Look at that plane, how low it is to the ground. It's almost impossible. Remember, the pilots were inexperienced. Think of the precision on getting a plane to do that. All right, I'm going to hand this back to Colin. Colin, you've seen the videos. Tell me what you think hit the Pentagon.
Okay, well, if you can bear with me for a while, I'll just give you an overview of the way that we approach these accidents and the reason for the accident. So, you know, I can understand that conspiracy theories can be intriguing to some, but it's important to approach such topics with caution and rely on verified information. So we start from that premise.
Right.
As far as September 11 is concerned, it's been extensively investigated, and the issue has come up. They can't find any ulterior motives in the news media anyway, and it comes down to terrorist attacks carried out by Al Qaeda. So, although conspiracy theories can be harmful and disrespectful to victims and their families, they can also be very valuable in a post-accident validation concept. So what you've just shown here is actually very, very important and very valuable, because it takes the analysis of what's happened to another degree, which is very, very important. So if you can bear with me, I'll go through the 4 different scenarios that we use and the way that we approach this.
Sure.
And I'll just read what I've got down here. So, an accident where the end result is clearly defined and accepted unconditionally by grieving relatives, keeping in mind that there could still be potential factors that only come to light later. The second one, a scenario where it is immediately obvious that the accident has happened and could have been avoided. This creates suspicion and doubt and increases suffering for the relatives. A third scenario where there is no objective evidence that an accident has even occurred. For example, aircraft losses in the Bermuda Triangle, over densely forested areas, over the ocean, or to some degree a current issue with the MH370 accident that we are involved with the media over here. And the fourth scenario where there is irrefutable evidence as to what has occurred, but conspiracy theories develop, often fueled, and this is another dimension from a diagnostic point of view, often fueled by ill-informed, self-proclaimed aviation or associated experts who are on an ego trip at the expense of the grieving families, again current issue with the MH370 accident. So I bring that concept in because one has to be very analytical and from a diagnostic point of view when it comes to an accident, you've got to get down to exactly what happened. So just going on to a couple of examples that relate to what I've just read through there. Garuda Airlines, Yogyakarta, and that happened on the 7th of March 2007. We were involved in the detailed analytical accident investigation with Garuda Airlines. So that one we were directly involved with. Newcrest Manado, you know about, you've discussed that on your program before.
Yeah.
10 fatalities. There were 2 South Africans, 2 Australians. The Airlink Jetstream 41 accident that happened in Durban, and the MH370, the one that I've just mentioned. So with those 4 examples, Garuda, we did the complete accident investigation. Newcrest, we did the complete accident investigation. The Airlink Jetstream, we were called in by the family, or by a member of the family, Gary Freeman, to do an analysis of the whole accident scenario, and we deduced and came to the conclusion that the report that was put out after the accident was incorrect. They had misinterpreted what had actually happened in terms of flight data recorder details and that sort of thing. So it was the wrong result. We don't believe that Alistair Freeman, who was the pilot who died a couple of weeks after the accident, that he was actually responsible for what happened. In fact, the reverse to that in its entirety, because what he did to get that aircraft down in the small space was actually quite amazing. So what this is that when we are involved in these accidents, to whatever degree we're involved, invariably we get contacted by the families. So Garuda Airlines, we were contacted by families. That they actually came to see me. We were on the Sunshine Coast at the time. 3 of the families came to actually visit me. Newcrest Monado, one of the families came across to Melbourne, and we met with them here. And so the involvement goes on in terms of what we deal with. So what I'm portraying here is not just a look at the accident from an external point of view, but we also look at the effect that it has on the family. So we're very, very careful as to what we determine and what the end result is.
Right.
If we come back to 9/11 then, there's a huge amount of information for and against, but it also comes back to verified information. So if you look at, for example, the aircraft that went into the Twin Towers, there's also evidence that there were, some of the motors came off and they were lying on the side of the road and that sort of thing. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can. Yep, all good.
Okay. Yeah, so there's evidence on both sides, not to mention the fact that there was something like 2,977 fatalities with the Twin Towers, and then the aircraft themselves and the loss of the aircraft. We've got air traffic control. They scrambled F-16s to try and get to them before they caused all that damage. So one has to, and this is our view, one has to look at it from a very balanced, objective point of view to make sure that all the evidence is put in place to analyze what the end result is.
Okay.
So that's the way that we approach these issues. As far as 9/11 is concerned, there are arguments, what you've shown there with the videos.
Yeah, with the Pentagon. What do you see there?
Yeah, that's actually very interesting, because that light that comes across on the security camera doesn't look like an aircraft. There's absolutely no doubt about that. That looks like something else. Now, if that's camera footage, what we would do, if we were involved in that, we would take the camera footage, we would have it assessed, we would have it analyzed as to whether it was accurate or not, and then put that against a timeline with when the aircraft actually came in and then flew into the Pentagon. So there are a lot of different aspects that can be brought into this to verify what the evidence is and to what it actually means. But from those videos that you show, it looks suspect. The only thing is that if it was a missile, where was that fired from? And then, of course, the objective evidence with what was inside the Pentagon once the accident happened, or the deliberate accident happened, and were there parts of aircraft and all that sort of analysis. So in terms of accident investigation, those aspects would have to be analyzed.
Well, I can tell you where that missile, which I think it's a missile, hit the Pentagon. That was actually the audit department of the Pentagon that was investigating missing $2.6 trillion US. And the I've forgotten what his name is, the US Secretary of State had said that, anyway, the next day he was actually going to explain what had happened to the money. And that was on the 10th of September that he actually said this publicly. And then on the 11th, this missile passenger plane hit exactly where the audit was being done, and all those records were destroyed. That's what happened.
Yeah, you see that is where these theories come in, but those theories, if I look at it from our perspective, we would probably spend weeks and weeks analyzing exactly what went on there. But the problem is, you've also got, you talk about the destruction of evidence, and if that was the case, which it might well be, who knows, the issue is that, the analysis of that whole process would have to be gone through in great detail.
Yeah, and there are people in the side chat saying, yeah, you're right. It was a room where the documents were held regarding this. And, it's interesting because once 9/11 happened, that $2.6 trillion was never talked about again. It just went right off the radar. Now, okay, I'm going to go to the next accident site, which has created a lot of controversy, Colin, because it's like a hole in the ground, and once again, there's no evidence of a plane. It's a plane that was going to the White House. Apparently, the passengers fought back and caused the plane to crash in a field. So I've got two images, and I'd like you to just comment on these while I show them. Okay, let me just put them up. Okay. Okay, no, I don't want that one. Sorry. Okay, I'm just going to take that down. Okay, here we go. Now, for those who are watching through the live stream, this is the plane that crashed in the field. And the questions that have been asked here is, for example, where are the wings? Where are the engines? Where are the bodies? Where's the baggage? You'd think that there would be stuff scattered around, but all you've got, and I'll show you the other image I've got, is a hole in the ground. There it is, you can see it. There's absolutely no evidence of any part of a plane there. Do you want to talk to that, Colin?
Yeah, well, of course, the issue with the wings is a definite question mark, because if it had come in from its normal operating flight level of, say, 36,000 feet, and they pushed it into a vertical dive, which is possible, there is a possibility that the wings would have, come off, in theory only, of course, because they very well solidly attached. But if they had come off, surely there'd be photographs of where the wings are at some other location before the fuselage went into the ground. The hole in the ground is what normally does happen with a massive weight like that at that speed going into the ground. You do get that impact, and then you get a lateral explosion, as it were, out to the sides, that you've got the depth, and then you've got the expansion circumference-wise around where the aircraft hit. So that could be quite accurate in terms of what it's showing there. But you're right, there's the baggage and everything else that goes with it that was inside the aircraft. Did they clear all that away and then take the photographs? So, and they might have done that for, sort of reasons not to show belongings and not to show what had actually happened. In other words, to clean up the area. But one would have thought that they should have shown more evidence of what actually happened there, apart from the lead up as they had in terms of what happened in the aircraft, because there were recordings, as you know, before the aircraft was actually flown into the ground.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is that photo was taken within a few hours of the accident or the crash.
Well, I would ask the exact questions that you're asking. I'd say, where are the wings, and where's the other evidence from the accident site relating to it? And of course, then that backs onto the witnesses, the witnesses, but also the air traffic control on radar, how far they could actually track it. Of course, it would go out of range the lower it got. Whether there were other aircraft in the air at the time who would be following what was happening and probably would possibly have a visual sighting of the aircraft, and so on and so forth. So there are a whole lot of layers beyond what we look at from the immediate issue that would have to be analyzed. Now, one would have thought that somewhere that evidence would have been analyzed and brought out as part of this result of a post-accident investigation.
Right. Now, look, there's one other burning question with all this, and maybe you can give us a technical reply to this, and that is that there's so much audio of people on the plane saying we've been hijacked, and calling their loved ones and saying I might never see home and all this sort of stuff. This was in 2001. Now, I don't think you can make a mobile phone call from the sky to someone on the ground from a plane, even today. So how could that mobile footage, sorry, that audio footage of people making these calls from the plane, how could it be real?
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. It was only later on that they brought in the wireless or the internet link, satellite link to these aircraft where these calls could be made. The only other aspect would be from telephone that were retrieved from the accident site, which is unlikely because the accident site is such a conclusive event. So there definitely is a loose end there. I'm not sure how that would have occurred, but that should have also been analyzed and also put into a detailed post-incident description to sort of put people's minds to rest. Because if you don't close off all these avenues, then you do end up with the conspiracy theories that go out of control. So they should have put these analyses in place at the time so that it was a clear-cut result.
Yeah, well, clearly back then in 2001, the mobile phone system was not as sophisticated as it is today with 5G. And I think even with 5G, you're not able to communicate with a plane by mobile phone. And these people who were being presented on by television news a couple of days later were apparently authentic calls made from the planes. And there's one in particular where this woman says, they're hijackers on the plane. They've taken control of the plane. It must have been an actor, because you can't do that. You can't get that audio coming back to a phone on the ground. And who on the ground would be recording a mobile phone call like that in the first place?
Yeah, the only time that would work is if you're actually on the ground. For example, as we know, when you land and you're in direct, contact of one of the towers. But it is a loose end. There's absolutely no doubt.
Yeah. Okay. So there's some questions there, certainly, about the so-called phone calls. Now, I want to go to the Twin Towers because I've got two video clips here. One, which is taken by some random guy who just happened to be pointing at where the first plane crash into the building had happened. And he's filming when the second building blows up. And you can see there's no plane. There's no plane. There's an explosion happening from inside the building. And then the second footage is from a mainstream media camera outfit actually filming the site of the Twin Towers, when you see the second plane come in and hitting the building. And this is where it's weird, because the nose of the plane comes through the other side of the building. You can actually see it. And that to me make no sense at all. Let me just play those two video clips and I'll get you to talk to it. Okay, so this first one is the guy who randomly was filming, and you see if you can see a plane in this video clip. Here we go.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Lloyd, Clifton. Lloyd, do you know about the World Trade Center? All right, I'm on the second tower just exploded. No, I went to go vote this morning, and I went to park my car, and I'm on the roof of this garage, and as a matter of fact, it just caught the second explosion on videotape. No, a bomb, I saw it. No plane hit nothing. The building exploded from the other tower.
Okay, now here's the second clip. Now, if you look carefully here, you'll see the nose of the plane coming through. Watch here. See the nose?
Oh my goodness!
Watch here.
Purposefully.
There's the nose.
Oh my goodness! Perhaps purposefully.
There's the nose. There. Okay, Colin, back to you.
Well, the first one with the filming and no aircraft being seen before there's the impact with one of the Twin Towers is, even with modern cameras, one would think that the shutter speed, you would pick up the aircraft, coming in.
Absolutely.
So there's probably a slim chance that it was going so fast, the shutter speed, or it was an old phone or whatever it was, didn't pick that up until it actually hit the Twin Towers, but there's a question mark above that without any doubt. The second one with the aircraft hitting the Twin Tower and the nose coming out the other side is probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life, and for anybody to even show that is a gross injustice to accident investigation, the families and everything else, because that is absolute nonsense. As that nose, which has got the radar, radome built into the nose, which is, quite fragile, would immediately, destroy the aircraft. So there's absolutely no ways that could happen. So that's definitely CGI.
Okay, CGI is like a hologram where they've got something which appears to hit the building, but it's not actually there.
Yeah, that's right. In other words, they've created it. They've cooked it up.
Right.
For the media.
Well, there's really no other explanation, because, as you say, if the front of a plane hits a piece of concrete, it just crumples. It goes nowhere. I've seen a video of a plane hitting a piece of concrete. It was a test they did, and the plane just crumpled into nothing. It just because it's so light. So for it to go through steel girders and solid concrete is bullshit.
No, it's absolute nonsense.
Okay. Now, so we've got questions about the plane that hit the Pentagon. We've got questions about the plane that went into the field. We've got questions about the plane that hit Building 2, or I think it was the northern building was the second one. I might be wrong. It might be the southern Twin Tower. But there are 3 out of 4 of these planes that there are questions that could be asked from your technical perspective. Is it the big question now is what happened to the actual planes? Because if they weren't the planes that they talked about, what happened to the planes with all those passengers on board? And what I'd like to ask you is, back in 2001, did they have the technology back then for someone remotely to control the planes, take over the planes, and so that the pilot on the plane could no longer control the plane that he was flying?
The answer to that is a clear-cut no, absolutely not possible, and also not possible today unless the aircraft has been equipped to be remotely, autonomously controlled from the ground or from an external source. So it's absolutely not possible, and it was not possible at the time.
Right, okay, but if they had doctored the planes, as you say, using a particular technology, they could have done that.
No, impossible, because there are too many systems and too many controls that would have to be changed to make that possible. And it was not possible at that time. It's not possible today unless the aircraft has been specifically designed. And there are aircraft like it that are currently being tested and flown.
Right.
But in those days, definitely not.
So the contra to this question about were there planes who hit these different areas is, where did the planes go if it wasn't a plane that hit the Pentagon, that went into the field, that hit the second building to be struck by what looks like a plane? Where did those planes go? Which is a crazy thought. If those weren't planes, what happened to those planes?
Okay, well, you see, this goes full circle back to what we were talking about earlier on, because the authorities should have provided more information as to what had happened, and they explained a lot of what actually happened in terms of what they think led up to each event. But there's nothing else beyond that. And if you provide that information after an accident, you're looking for conspiracy theories, and you're looking for somebody to query, exactly as you're doing quite rightly now. That's what happens. They should have done this properly and provided enough information to put everybody's mind at rest. So as far as the aircraft are concerned, the aircraft would have disintegrated. So there would be evidence of the aircraft, what was left of them, in all of those 4 sites. There would be, and there were motors out of the aircraft, engines on the ground, and that sort of thing. But it would have been a disintegration because of the impact forces with each one.
Right. Okay. Now, just in summary, Colin, just from the videos you've seen, what we've discussed, do you think that the investigation by the U.S. authorities into 9/11 was comprehensive enough?
Now, this is where my anger starts to rise, because, the issue is, as I said, it's important to approach these topics with caution and rely on verified information. So what they've done is they've left a whole trail of loose ends that everybody is looking at and trying to get to a conclusion as to what it actually means. And that you're unable to get to a final conclusion with a lot of it. And they've failed in that they have not provided that information in its entirety to actually put the matter to rest.
Right. Okay, well, look, I'm going to move on from 9/11 now and move on to an accident that happened, or it looks like it was an explosion that happened to the leader of the Wagner Group's private plane last month over Russia. You've seen the video clip. I'm just going to play that, Colin, then we'll talk about it, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, guys, this is I think his name is Piroshkin or something like that. He was the guy who upset Putin a couple of months ago by having a semi-coup attempt against Putin, which he pulled out of. And then he had this strange accident where his plane just falls out of the sky. Let's have a look at that.
Getting a lot of questions about this video that appeared on Twitter today of this Embraer 135 aircraft falling out of the sky in what appears to be, in my opinion, clearly a case of a crippled aircraft descending out of the clouds. Here's what little we know so far. Here on the Aviation Safety Network, Embraer EMB 135 Legacy 600.
I apologize for the quiet audio.
Registration Romeo Alpha 027905. 10 fatalities, 10 occupants near the Tiver region of Russia en route. An Embraer Legacy 600 jet crashed in a field near, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, the Tiver region of Russia, bursting into flames. All 3 crew members and 7 passengers have died. Videos posted on social media purportedly of the accident show an aircraft spiraling down with a white vapor smoke trail. Other imagery shows burning wreckage of the aircraft in a field. So as I review this video, first it's amazing somebody caught it. You see this white bit of smoke up here, some more white smoke here, and then the crippled aircraft tumbling out of the sky here. can also hear a jet noise, whether it's one or two jet engines, I don't know. My first thought would be, would that be a second jet in the area? But this jet noise goes away once this aircraft impacts the ground.
Пиздец, это беспилотник. Сбили.
And we back this up. This aircraft is a crippled aircraft. It's not a classic spin out of the clouds. It's not a classic loss of control. It's not a classic stall spin scenario. It doesn't even appear to be a classic in-flight breakup where you initially lose control of the aircraft. You start for example, you get into IMC conditions, you get disoriented. Like so many of these crashes start out, the aircraft begins in a spiraling descent, increasing airspeed until which time they get to VNE, or the maximum airspeed for the airframe, and then pull too many G's and then pull the aircraft apart. This aircraft is just simply falling straight out of the sky in a very crippled fashion. And from this video, I can't even tell if we're looking at, do we have both wings on the aircraft? I believe both wings are on the aircraft, but it looks like the aircraft is tumbling as if, to me, a section of the tail might be missing. But it's just slowly tumbling, ass over tea kettle. Still producing a bit of smoke there. Then it looks like it goes inverted and then impacts. So clearly an aircraft crippled somehow, whether this aircraft was shot down or blown up internally remains to be determined. And of course
Okay, Colin, what in your view, what do you think happened there to that plane?
Well, it's actually very interesting because you remember in our military days in South Africa, we had that organization, Executive Outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a gun for hire type thing, which is what the Wagner Group is. And Prigozhin's demise was inevitable, really. You know, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So
right.
He was on borrowed time for a long time, and he was a very, very nasty individual. So I don't think too many people feel too upset about it. But as far as the aircraft was concerned, it was either shot down or there was a bomb on board, and they're still trying to analyze which one it is. They know the aircraft was delayed on the ground because they had a supposed maintenance issue. And just towards the end of the engineer coming on board and sorting out whatever the problem was, they put a box of wine, a case of wine was put on board. So they're suspecting that there was a bomb in the case of wine that was put on at the very last minute, or else it was a SAM missile, of the same type that shot that other MH aircraft down, many years ago. But it was either one or the other, and it would have been definitely orchestrated by Putin because of what happened, because Prigozhin turned against him.
Right. Okay. So there's no question that was a planned destruction of a plane in the sky.
Absolutely none.
Okay. All right, now let's move on to a different area altogether. We're now talking about a very disturbing development that's taking place when it comes to passenger planes in parts, I think it's the US at the moment where this is happening, where normally you have two pilots in the cockpit so that if one pilot has a heart attack or something happens, the other pilot can take over and continue managing the plane. But what some airlines are now doing is saying we only need one pilot. I've got a video clip I'm going to play now where you'll hear this guy who's a pilot talking about how dangerous it is for pilots who were mandated to have that snake oil a couple of years ago, and how that's actually impacted pilots that he is friends with. He's obviously in the aviation industry. I'm going to play that video clip, then I'm going to get Colin to talk about what the dangers are related to having just one pilot in the cockpit. Here we go.
Okay, so now what happened?
So I'm a pilot with the airlines, and it's mandatory that we take the shot in order to keep flying.
Right.
So we took shot 1, we took shot 2, we took the booster 1, and at that point there was enough evidence from the medical examiners.
Yeah.
There was enough evidence with the medical examiners that showed that there was a heart rhythm that wasn't there before the test. So these EKGs that we have to take every 6 months now are causing problems with pilots being able to pass. So what the FAA has done is the FAA has increased the window in which the rhythm, so that the pilots could pass so they could keep flying. Because the vaccine has actually done heart damage to all the pilots.
Right. I just was reading about another pilot that died who was incapacitated in flight this week.
Yep.
So, what recourse do you feel like you have?
There's none.
Because they forced you.
There's no recourse at all. It's a federal implemented thing, and you can't sue the federal government. So there's not going to be any recourse.
Are there other pilots that are talking about this?
Yeah, everybody is.
All the pilots are talking about
Yep,
this?
every pilot's talking about it. And every pilot refuses to get any more vaccines at all, period.
Do you know what biodigital convergence is?
Don't have any idea.
So I'm going to tell you more about that after this video. Because it's not technically a vaccine. They changed the definition.
Right. It's an RR vaccine.
So that they could get stuff in you that they want in you.
Right.
And so, anyway, what do you think is going to happen when they pull out this new fake so-called pandemic? Because they're airing all the stories right now about the Eris variant, which is, I mean, it's such a joke. But do you think that they're going to do this again?
None of the pilots are going to participate in any of it anymore. Pilots are done with the nonsense.
Okay, and tell me about the $1 billion that they wrote to each airline company.
Yeah, they wrote, they gave the airlines each $1 billion to keep flying empty planes around and make it look like there was business so people would come back to the airlines.
Oh my gosh. And when was this?
This was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
So we want to lock you all down, but we don't want the airlines to fail.
Right.
So we're going to fly empty planes.
That's right.
To make it look like everybody's cool.
That's right.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
All right. Colin, basically the point that pilot was making was that all his mates who are pilots are refusing to have any more of the snake oil because they say that their hearts have been impacted, and that's been shown through medical checks and so on. Now, with a more vulnerable situation for the guy flying the plane, it sounds crazy to actually knock out the second pilot and just have one pilot flying passenger planes. What are your thoughts on this particular issue?
Well, you know, we've been fighting this for about the last year in terms of the move to have just one single pilot. If you go back a few years and just looking at the statistics, and this is quite a long time ago because this has been increasing as time has gone by, but there have been 23 incapacitations each year. So and those are incapacitations where the pilot is completely incapacitated. In other words, if there'd been a single pilot on board, that would have been the end of everybody on the aircraft. So it's a clear-cut thing. probably even higher. So it was in the last 5 years, there have been 23 incapacitations, but this is going back a long time ago. So the issue that they're talking about there is also, what they also mentioned there is that the FAA have changed the parameters for the ECGs in terms of the readings have been expanded to make it more lenient. So there's more likely to be a heart problem, linking back to the COVID vaccines. Obviously, there's more likely to be incapacitation from a heart problem now because they've become more lenient. So this now goes back to an involvement that we had a long time ago. You'll remember the Colin Weir flight 3407, the Dash 8 400 that crashed in Buffalo.
Right.
This was quite a long time ago, and at that time we were auditing, and we had audited one of the big regional airlines in Australia. You'll know them well. And we found out that their first officers didn't have the required minimum hours of, say, 2,000 hours. They did an ATPL theory course, and then they went and did about 120 hours of flying, which is their training. They went straight into the simulator and did 32 simulator sessions, and then they went online to fly. And with that, everybody in aviation knows that it's impossible for somebody with that level of experience to take over in a critical emergency type situation with an engine fire or bad weather. And this Colin Weir flight was a typical example of where that went wrong. So we refused to accept the pilots they wanted to put on board. We made them put more high time pilots on board, and that led to a huge issue over here with the Civil Aviation Authority looking into it and that sort of thing. So to cut a long story short, what is happening is that there's this move to look at cost against safety and to compromise safety at the expense of increasing cost, which is a really nasty thing that we deal with every day of our lives. Because if you can't get that balance right, and accountants that don't fly can't get that right. So now we've got the situation with single pilot operations being brought into the system, which is absolutely ridiculous and unheard of. And yet a lot of the airlines are accepting it because the hierarchy within the airlines are looking at saving a lot of money by just having one crew member on board at the expense of safety.
Wow.
It's horrifying, absolutely horrifying.
Well, can you imagine the headline? Passenger plane with 400 passengers crashes in the sea after pilot by himself dies of a heart attack. I mean, who would ever fly again?
Well, it really is a very, very serious situation. When we first came upon it, we thought it was just a conceptual theory.
Yeah.
But of course now it's not. Now it's reality. They are making a move in every way possible to bring it in as soon as possible.
Which airlines are involved in this? Are there specific ones?
No, I remember reading about it, but what I can say is that there are 3 very large airlines operating that are pushing for this.
Which ones are they?
I'm not 100% sure. One would have to look it up, just see which ones they are. But I don't want to mention anything unless I'm 100% sure. But if you do a search, the list is there.
Right. Okay. Now that takes us into the future, and what I'd like to talk to you about now is the suggestion that in years to come you won't have human people flying planes. You'll have robots flying planes. And I'm just going to play a little video clip so that people can see what we're talking about, and then we'll talk about this separately. Here we go.
about the pilot robot is that it can fly the airplane without the many problems that pilots suffer. Humans have a limited, strength that you can only fly at a certain time, and there's a lot of fatigue. But the pilot robot can fly the airplane as long as the electrical power is sustained, and also it has the extreme amount of the memory that you can refer to the self-contained flight charts that doesn't really have to rely on the paper version of the manuals. So basically you can memorize the entire world's the flight chart, and you can retrieve it, and you can fly the airplane.
Okay, so Colin, what are your views on robots flying passenger planes?
Well, there's only one step up from an accountant perspective to save money with having only one single pilot, and that's having no pilot. So they are hell-bent on bringing this in, and the reason is that, of course, they don't have to pay the pilot. There's no fatigue, there's no flight and duty time unless the battery runs out. And the issue is that the ability of the robot pilot, they're saying they can memorize everything. So all the charts, all the maps, all the procedures, all the reactions can be inbuilt into an AI type situation that can cope with everything that can happen. However, there are still other aspects that they probably deliberately overlook and disregard. And for example, the human factor element remains essential, especially during emergencies. So their argument is that all those emergencies can be inbuilt into the robot AI system to deal with those, but there is still a human element that sits outside of that. So the issue is to strike the right balance between automation and human control, and that's where it's going to be critical. So this isn't going to happen very quickly, but the problem is it is already happening, and we are, and you'll probably come on to that topic, shortly with regard to eVTOL operations. It's already happening.
Let's talk about eVTOL operations while you're talking.
Well, you are fortunate enough to have the first vertiport. It's been built in Brisbane, and the first electric helicopter or eVTOL helicopter is there, and they're busy testing it and doing issues on. They say that by the end of next year, these are going to be fully functional in all the major cities, including Melbourne. So I'm part of the CASA working group over here, working on the new regulations that are going to be brought in to cope with eVTOL operations. Now, the eVTOL operations are going to be introduced in three phases, and this links directly back to single pilot and PIBO, the robot pilot. It links directly back into that. So the first one that we're dealing with right now from a regulatory point of view is flights with a pilot and possibly 3 passengers, daylight hours or night VFR, night visual flight rules operation. So that'll be with a pilot. In very soon after that, and they're working on all the electronic procedures right now, it's going to be a flights with no pilot, completely autonomous in day or night VFR operations. And the third one, which is further away obviously, is going to be flights with no pilot in all weather day or night operations. Wow. So that whole concept is happening right now with massive companies all over the world, like Boeing and Wisk and many others have come in with, and also Elon Musk is also involved in this as well.
Wow. So what you're saying is that Boeing, when you buy a plane from them, they will actually provide the robots who will actually fly the plane.
Yes, yeah, they'll be they'll be part of the deal, and probably a spare one and spare batteries as well.
Wow. Okay, that's good. Look, I'm not going to fly in a plane that's been piloted by a robot. That's the bottom line. I mean, no friggin' way. Now, one thing we do need to just touch on is artificial intelligence, because whether we like it or not, it's becoming more and more invasive in every part of our life. What is the role of artificial intelligence when it comes to piloting planes?
Well, the issue with artificial intelligence is that it's being brought in everywhere as quickly as possible. So it can be brought in because it enhances decision making and reduces the workload. So, for example, where we've had aircraft where you've had an autopilot, which is manually operated by the pilot. Now, what is coming in is, for example, if they bring in single pilot operations, they've got to have a backup. So they'll bring in an autopilot system that can be designed from an AI point of view to compensate and work with a pilot. That's one of the aspects that they could bring in. But it's immensely complicated in terms of how they combine the two. So in theory, it would probably be easier for them to come in directly with a robot pilot system on using AI than trying to combine the two. And that's probably what they'll do. They'll probably bypass that because of cost anyway, because it'll be more cost effective for the accountant side of the airlines.
Okay. Now, let's move on, because we've been talking about conspiracy theories and what happened in 9/11 and so on. And if we look to the future, and I'm talking about Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset, how do you see this impacting aviation?
Well, there's probably a very quick answer to all of that, because Klaus Schwab says that by the year 2030, we'll all be wearing uniforms supplied by the state and we'll all be happy.
Yeah, and we'll all own nothing.
Yeah, exactly, because they will own it all. So the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, it's a concept that emerged in the COVID-19 pandemic, coincidentally enough, advocating for a global economic and societal transformation to reevaluate priorities and build a more sustainable and equitable future, which just happens to suit a small group of the very wealthy people at the expense of everybody else.
Could we define that by the people who participate at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, or those who are members of the World Economic Forum are the elite group who are going to benefit?
Very, very good point, because now we start to sort of focus on who that might be and what this is all about. And apparently, there's gold bullion being stored in massive quantities underground. There are all of these theories and, possibly conspiracy theories, but with a lot of substance to them now, which are coming in.
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to the Great Reset, I can see that you are totally on board with the fact that this is not good for humanity.
Well, the problem is that when you start putting all of this together with AI, the human race, exploitation of all these factors,
transhuman,
yes, and all of these aspects, the intersection of AI, single pilot airline operations, the Great Reset, the fate of the human race presents both immense promise and profound challenges. There's absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever. And the issue there is, I guess, it's our collective responsibility to navigate these changes with caution, to ensure that AI serves as a tool for progress rather than a threat to our well-being. Because the big problem that they've got with AI, it's starting to run away with itself. And because it's becoming so advanced, and because it's reaching a stage of reason, eventually AI and robots are going to reason that they can survive without humans,
yeah,
and become self-sustaining.
Well, did you know that Facebook had two AI systems operating on their system, and they discovered that these two AI independent systems had started communicating directly with each other in a language they had created that no one else could understand, and they actually turned them off because they said this is dangerous because we don't know what they're actually talking about.
That's exactly the issue. And you know what, one would think, oh, this is going to happen sometime in the future, but what you've just described there is what is happening now. And so when does this reach a point where they can not only communicate and reason, but they can also manufacture? Because that's what will be next. They'll manufacture robots as part of their complement.
Yeah. You'll have a robot army.
Yes.
Now, Colin, once again, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, because we've covered a lot of ground, but I have got a question for you from Marius, who says, why did the US allow the Saudi Arabia to build a sort of tower shrine at 9/11 where the buildings were?
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I've actually been to the site of 9/11, and it's very poignant. You've got these big holes which have got like a little wall around them, and the names of everybody who was killed on the actual top of the walls. And when it's their birthday, they put a rose in the little hole next to the name. And you know, inside this big hole where the towers used to be, they've got water just continuously pouring in. It's crazy.
Well, that's a very interesting question, and that actually touches on a whole new topic, and that is the woke, the woke changes that are taking place in our social system, all the way down the line, from pronouns to this to that to the other, and everybody is aware of that, and that all ties into this great reset and that whole process. So the reason why that shrine is there can only be from a woke variation to what is obviously not acceptable to reasonable people.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Okay, now, Colin, is there anything else you'd like to add to our discussion we've had tonight? Anything you'd like to clarify regarding 9/11 that you might not have spoken about earlier? Anything we've talked about tonight? Over to you.
No, I think we've covered everything that's pertinent, current, and that is critical to what's happening in aviation at the moment. It's just that and I thank you for this opportunity, because the more we get this out into the open, the more people become aware of actually what's going on, because in our operations and what we're doing, very few people understand the in-depth side of these things. So they talk about single pilot operations, and they don't understand the backdrop to it, and then robotic pilots and everything else. So there's a lot of information that still needs to come out to make everybody aware of what's happening.
Yeah, you must sort of have really nightmares when you go to bed at night with some of these things that are going on.
We fight this battle every single day of our lives, where for example, we were called in to do an accident investigation with a helicopter recently, and we did the investigation, gave them the report, and then they said, just like with Newcrest, they said, no, well, we can't really accept this report. You know, it's going to be too compromising. Can you make some changes? And we said, no, we don't do that. We do the report as is. It's factual, and we don't change things in the report. And we no longer work for that organization.
Wow. Okay, so they're compromising the safety of their staff just to look good.
Well, to prevent. What it actually is that middle management and upper management levels, when they compromise, they realize they're likely to lose their jobs because this should never have happened.
So they just scrapped your report.
So the easiest thing is to get rid of us.
Yeah.
Just like with the Newcrest one, bring another organization in that does a report that suits them and doesn't implicate them, and that solves their problem. But it doesn't solve the aviation safety problem.
Wow. Okay. Colin, thank you so much for joining us at this ungodly hour. It's now just after 5 o'clock in the morning, Australian time. And I really appreciate you, doing the research and joining us tonight and sharing your expertise. It's really appreciated.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Scott.
You're very welcome. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up this live stream. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think we covered a lot of ground, and it's always a pleasure having Colin on. You know, he is one of the top aviation experts in the world today, and I think that some of the comments he made about, for example, what hit the Pentagon and other issues regarding where were the planes or the wings, raises some issues that people should be talking about and thinking about. But of course, with what's going on in the world today with big tech, it's called, according to them, misinformation and disinformation, as per what we saw a few years ago with YouTube pulling down channels left, right and center because of medical misinformation. Isn't that ironic that most of those conspiracy theories turned out to be absolutely on the money? All right, guys, I'm going to go out with Hier Bly Ek Boer. Have a great evening, and don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we have another live stream. Take care. And thanks to the mods for looking after the side chat. I did see some activity in there, and it's always great that you guys look after that. Oh, by the way, tomorrow night, I'm talking to one of our channel heroes, Michelle Mallard, and we're going to be talking about something really exciting that she's working on. And if you're an old fart like me, if you're in your 60s, 70s, and you basically sit around all day, don't have much to do, especially if you're a SASA person and you'd like to take on a hobby and actually create something, but we'll be talking about that tomorrow night, and it's quite an exciting discussion. So please join me tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, and let's go out with Hier Bly Ek Boer.
Dis my land, die is my reg, hier is ek boer. Van stof is ek gemaak en sal ek terugkeer. Die Bybel is die woord waaruit ek leer, soos die grond op die aarde. Hier bly ek boer. In die nacht sal die vijand kom, maar hier bly ek staan en ek draai nie om, want jy maak my nie bang nie. Hier bly ek boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg, die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. In die somer wat vreugde bring, my oupa wat maniekie roe kon sing, soos hy stap deur die lande, hier was hy boer. My wortels leek diep in die grond geplant, my seun soos my pa los ek vir jou die land en jy hoef nie te vrees nie. Hier sal jy boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my zweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land waar ek jou sê. Die is my land wat my mense voer. Hier bly ek voor. Die leeu sal kom, 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 die leeu sal kom.